We're live.
We're live.
We are live.
So what's up, guys?
Fellas, thanks for having us.
Yes, sir. Where are you guys at?
We're freezing our rear ends off in Wisconsin right now.
Wisconsin.
The temperature doesn't go negative enough to, or the thermometer, I mean, doesn't go negative enough to even tell us what degrees it is right now. So,
Pretty cold up where you're at too, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah, we're in the teens here, and we're getting hammered with that snow that's coming down from the lakes. So
it's like it's actually 50 degrees warmer there than here.
Probably is.
Can't imagine. Can't imagine.
We got a bunch of people. What's up, Travis, David, Jay, hunting and stuff with J&J. So thanks for everybody for joining in. I wanted to bring in Mike and Tim. These guys are from Domain Outdoors, and they sell food plot seed. I wanted to bring them into the live stream to kind of give a different perspective on seeds and food plots. And we'll probably all pretty much say the same thing, but since these guys deal with the seed themselves, some of the questions that come in on the live streams, I can't physically answer because I'm not, I don't sell the seed, so I don't know. So I wanted to bring Mike and Tim in and discuss a few things in regards to that aspect, that different side of things. So Mike, where and how did Domain start?
I'll start it and I'll let Tim kind of finish it.
Yep.
But I've been fortunate. This is an industry that I've been in for quite a few years now. Tim and I have both been food plotting for a long time. And I've been privy to kind of work in product development and sales and marketing and all of that for the last 6 to 8 years. Moved out of that role into a new role, and then Tim and I kind of put our heads together and we're trying to come up with an idea of what we could do to, just take care of our own property, and all the friends that had reached out to me and us about custom blends and what have you. And I had a long list of ideas on paper and that we messed around with. And then from there, Tim kind of took it the next level, if you will. Tim Bob?
Well, every company has to have a name, right? So it's just kind of funny how we improved our property year over year just by doing little things, hinge cutting, clear cutting, putting in plots, and we didn't have a lot. We had 60 acres. So literally any area we could get a rake into and cut a couple of trees to open up the canopy, we're putting plots in. And that's how a lot of guys hunt. And, so we got to talking. We're like, man, we should just go and try and get our hands on some seed, and we can sell it to friends and family, and that'll be a good way to start. And Mike's my brother-in-law, and so we see each other a lot, and we were down at the cabin, and we're like, well, why don't we're going to do it. So we went and did it, and we were hand mixing with coffee cups and measuring everything out. And then we decided we were going to start an LLC and actually make it a business, but then had to name it, right? So my good friend Tim and I my best friend's name's Tim. It's kind of weird, but we got talking, and we were like, why do you go down to the cabin every weekend? He's like, you're always there. You're never back home hanging with friends. And he's like, why do you put so much time into putting food plots in? And this kind of prompted the name game of, all right, we got to name this thing. But it came down to food, water, shelter. Deer need food, they need water, they need shelter. And he's like, it's kind of like you're creating their domain. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then the next day he came and he had a little graphic mocked up and it said, Domain, this is your land. And it just kind of hit home with me. And then we started talking about our mixes and started releasing those. We came out with 5 our first year. A couple of clover mixes that are great to plant in the spring, a couple of good brassica mixes, and then kind of your stereotypical throw and grow type mix. And that's when we came into market in 2019. That was our first year. Things kind of took off from there, and it's kind of how we got started. It was kind of an accident.
Nice. So you guys actually just bought a new warehouse, right?
We're renting a warehouse.
Yeah, we just moved into a new warehouse. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah, it's like Tim said, things have continued to grow, and in order to to do our part to support the demand and make sure everybody's got the seed that they need. We need to expand our space and our capability and our efficiency and all those things that you don't think about 3 years ago, right? When you're barely a company, let alone a brand, and then just continue to pour everything we have into it, and been lucky to get the support of guys like you and the trust, and it's been a hell of a lot of fun. So,
oh yeah,
you can tell by the names, and if you watch our live feeds, that we don't tend to take ourselves too seriously. We take our seed very seriously, but we don't take ourselves very seriously. So
that's what it's all about. Have fun.
I think the big sexies and the incognitos and the no BSs and all the names kind of really speak to who we are.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, what struck a chord with Dave and I is we look over a lot of seed, and a lot of these companies, like, their blends didn't even make sense. That's what I think is cool about you guys, is you have some blends here that make sense. There's some things that go together. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you came up with your blends, or did you have a little trial and error period where you tried some things and it didn't work? I mean, a lot of times you learn from your own mistakes.
That's where Tim and I excel, making mistakes and then learning from them. So we talk about a lot in our Beers and Bucks about, we can answer a lot of questions because we've made the exact same mistake and we failed miserably so many times. We're testing constantly, and not just in Wisconsin here. We test all over the place. I'll let Tim elaborate on the jugs and kind of how that came to be. That was kind of his idea, to make sure it was transparent, people could see it. But when it comes to the actual blends, it was really important for us to really try to take some of the chance out of it, if you will. We've sourced the best seeds you can source. We've tried to eliminate some of those varieties that just don't make sense to us, the ryegrasses and the fescues. We won't use them. It's a low quality seed. We're not into fillers. We're into the product being the best dang thing you can buy. And that kind of goes to Tim's transparent jug. But to your point, when we blended these mixes, a lot of testing took place prior to it even being considered to hit the marketplace. But we wanted to make sure that in a lot of our blends, that no matter what time of year it was, no matter what the temperature was, whether you're hunting in northern Florida or northern Saskatchewan, whether it was September or December, most of our mixes have plant varieties to attract deer at that time period. And I think that was, I see a lot with, I'll use Big Sexy, for instance, or Showstopper, some of those brassica mixes. When a lot of our customers think, or food plotters think brassica, they think, it must have to be cold for the deer to eat them. And we wanted to eliminate that, because I don't want you to think, man, November's been warm this year. I can't help my food plot that I put all my time and effort and money into. So we kind of flipped the switch a little bit and made sure that even in our coldest of cold tolerant hunt plots, there's a plant variety or forage in there that's going to provide food in the early season too. So yeah. We've tried to be extremely, all encompassing with every one of our mixes and well thought out, and from shade tolerance to soil environments to attraction periods to forage varieties. I mean, right on down the list. And that's, somebody said, guys, like, stop coming out with mixes, because I don't know what the hell to plant now. You have so many good options. But that's kind of our job. So yeah, I get long-winded, but
no, that's cool stuff. I mean, yeah, we were pleased to see that there was some stuff there that we really was anxious to be getting in the ground. And Dave will tell you, one of my pet peeves, one of my catchphrases is, you got to plant 365. We don't want to see bare dirt. We want something in the ground all year round. And some of these mixes, it helps to be able to do that. Absolutely. You can plant it in the fall and there'll be something there in the spring, and you can just cycle right on through to the next year.
Let's answer one of these questions here from Justin. And Mike or Tim, either one of you would like to answer those. Justin, good evening, guys. What's the best springtime food plot in pure dry sugar sand in southeast Alabama?
Good old sand.
Yeah.
I'll start, let Tim finish. like it or not, we grew up in Wisconsin where the glaciers brought in a lot of great soil, but they also brought in a lot of sand. So some of the key factors, the first thing I'd ask Justin to try to determine is the pH level. Just because it's sand doesn't necessarily mean it's got a poor pH. It just might mean it's low in different types of nutrients and organic matter, things of that nature. So I'm going to kind of a two-part. I'll talk about what I'd plant variety wise, and then Tim can bring it full circle with the actual domain mix. But springtime, sand, chicory, and some varieties of clover kind of be where I look. Reason being is chicory is drought tolerant. It's also soil tolerant, shade tolerant, heat tolerant, and those are some things that in sand you're gonna have to deal with. It also requires a low level of nutrients to be successful, but provides a high level of protein. I'd also look too in the fall to try to incorporate some mixes that offer organic matter builders. For instance, like a radish or a turnip, something that's going to pull nutrients into the upper level of soil, but then also once the deer eat it and there's forage remaining and you till it into the ground next year, it'll add some of that organic matter to help build the soil up. So Tim can talk about what mixes that would be for us.
Yeah, so the chicory clover mix is called Hot Chick. So that's got two varieties of clover, and then it's got chicory, and it's kind of a go-to for questionable soil. But another question, like this question is probably one of the most common questions that we get. What do I plant? And it's like, well, have you tested your pH? Number one, what type of light does it get? Is it in the woods? Is it open field? Have you ever planted anything before? Those are good questions to ask. But Hot Chick is definitely a really good one. If your pH is questionable, our mix is like a no BS, has some taproot in it that's going to grow. I mean, it grew in little trails and little logging roads and stuff like that. But we'd be curious to find out a little bit more about, how much sun's getting in, what is your pH. That would allow us to kind of better pinpoint it. But when in doubt, I always go with Hot Chick.
Yeah.
I would like to know from Justin what his organic matter is, the CEC of the soil, and I would suggest something like that as well as clovers or some sort of buckwheat to help bring up the pH with turnips for the fall and things like that.
Yep.
I want to touch on, because when you guys came out with this really intrigued me, and I want you guys to explain this to the viewers because I'm excited about it. And that's a hybrid brassica. You guys have found a brassica that can regrow 4 times. Explain.
Yeah, there's a few different type of hybrid brassicas on the marketplace that we researched and played around with. To Tim's point earlier, we get a ton of what should I plant? That's the number one question we get. As you dig deeper, what you often find, and we fall victim to this too, is most of us can't plant acres and acres of food. We're planting half acre or a quarter acre or what have you. And in a lot of instances, a guy or a gal will plant his hunt plot in August and it comes in great, looks awesome. And the deer devour it. And by later in the year, there's very little remaining. So we put a ton of research into something to kind of help solve that problem, if you will. And like I said, there's a couple different hybrid brassicas on the marketplace. We selected one that provides high levels of protein and great regrowth. That was our goal with it. People are used to perennials regrowing themselves, with a clover or chicory as they get grazed down, they grow themselves back. But big leafy brassicas, it's not something that's that common. So again, it's in a growing season, so the temperatures still need to be 60 or above. Sometimes even in the 50s will generate that regrowth as well once the roots are established. But Showstopper's a really neat mix. It's a blend of fast maturing and slow maturing plants, and then it's got that hybrid brassica in there that will regrow itself 4 times in one growing season. So as long as they don't pull the physical root out of the ground, it will regrow its leaves and its forage up to 4 times. So a
deer can take a bite of it and it'll regrow.
It will. Yeah. It was interesting. This year was really neat. We'd researched it for several years, but this year we finally I don't want to say we launched it into this new year, but we had a bunch of guys planting it last year. And It was a great year to test it, kind of lock in that final test, because November throughout the U.S. in a lot of places was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, which was unusual. And it was amazing how many people messaged us and said, my plot went from 0 to hero in the week that it was 60 in November. So it was pretty unique, pretty neat that guys were seeing plot growth in Wisconsin, mind you, in November from Showstopper on that third or fourth kind of go round of that hybrid brassica. So it's a mix that Tim, I mean, we test all over the place. Tim put it in his garden plot, I'll call it, just outside of his cabin. It was probably his number one food source all fall and winter. Had shooters in there all November. But it's a really, really neat mix. Really neat for small properties, small plots.
What's the maturity rate on that?
Yeah, so there's plants that mature anywhere from 60 to 100 days. And
Okay.
again, we do that, like we mentioned earlier, to make sure that there's food available. On the backside of this mix, there's a rutabaga, which at its maturity has higher levels of protein and energy than a turnip or a radish, larger taproots, larger leaves. So the hybrid brassica kind of acts as it takes the attention off the rutabaga and the turnip, so those can mature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a neat mix. It really is.
Yes, you have maturity coming at different times, so there's always something there to eat.
A lot of times
Gotcha.
maturity dictates consumption. So what happens with a lot of brassica mixes that people or deer only eat when it's cold, they're all late maturing plants. So it can have a tendency to be weather dependent. But when you have a variety of maturity levels designed that way, you're gonna have deer in there no matter what, because they'll seek their proteins early and their energy's late, and it's got it all. So
Okay.
Good deal.
so we're excited about that one too.
What's that?
I said we're excited about that one too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm definitely planting.
Oh, we're excited as well.
That was a fun one. So
It literally, I put it in like a tiny little plot, and I've got probably a acre bean field that I put in, just leave standing beans, and then runs down. I have another one of our plots, no BS, but then I put it literally right next to the cabin, and I had deer bucks and walking across the bean field to come into the showstopper, and 3 different shooters when I was working remotely at the cabin. This sucks. I need to be in a tree.
That's awesome. Dalton is asking, he's got a 1/4 acre food plot in southwest Alabama. What should he plant with a pH around 5.4? What can you guys offer him?
I would say, I mean, if you're putting some work in, put some lime down, like do your steps to improve it. 7's optimal. So you want to try and push it up there regardless of the mix. It's going to come in better. But we've seen guys put in hot chick and see success at that. No BS and see success at that. It might not grow as big, but it should still germinate and come up. But definitely put some work in. If you did where you send your soil in, you can prescribe the right nutrients that you need to add. Otherwise, we put a ton of pelletized lime down to help it. But that's what I would say. Hot chick would probably be my number one in that mix. That's got the chicory and 2 varieties of clover.
Okay.
yeah, I mean that Balanza clover in there can actually germinate in pHs as low as 4.8. We don't recommend it. I don't like to advertise that because I'd rather see the pH levels rise. But like Tim said, hot chick is kind of the fail-safe for us. It really is. I don't want to call it a fallback because it's a friggin' MVP, first ballot Hall of Famer. But it's going to perform even better when it's closer to 7.
Since you mentioned it, that's one of the questions I was going to have for you guys was like, in the hot chick blend, you have 2 clovers. Comeback Kid, you have 4 clovers. Can you expound on the clovers? Are they white clovers? Is there a red mix? Or is that information you don't want to release? I don't, it's up to you.
Hey, we've got transparent jugs, man. There's no secrets here.
Right.
So hot chick has chicory is kind of the foundation. That's really the like I said, that's the glue in that mix. And we could talk forever about why we like chicory. I think Tim and I talk about it a lot, just based on nutrient levels and its ability to grow and adapt anywhere, really. And then it's got a variety of Blanton's clover, which is the white clover. Blanton's has got a variety of traits that we really like. One of them is it's cold tolerant down to about 10 degrees. So it stays green dang near all year long, and in a lot of places all year long. It also is great for the soil. It's also tolerant to soil. It can grow virtually anywhere in shade, low pHs. And then it's got a variety of red clover as well, which is a perennial. So there's 2 perennials and an annual. They all just work really well together. That's kind of why we chose them, but provide high levels of protein as well. On the flip side, Comeback Kid is kind of more of our premium, if you will. A lot more clover in it than Hot Chick does. It requires a little bit better pH, although there's varieties in there that can handle acidic environments too. But it was designed as a manager's mix. That 5-year mix is going to provide high levels of protein and feed your herd year round. It's got Ladino and L-Psych. It's also got a variety of really cold alfalfa. And then it's got a variety of red, and then a variety of Berseem, which is in there intentionally to grow fast. It germinates really quick, provides kind of that foundation for the slower growing perennials to grow. So, I mean, you see a lot of claims out there about our mix has the most perennials or all perennials or what have you. The reason Berseem's in there is because it's an awesome clover. It's an annual, but it's something to get immediate green up, because perennials take longer to establish. They last longer, so they take longer. So instead of bringing the level of the mix down by putting a bunch of rape in it or something like that, we chose a different route. And if you wanted to overseed with oats or rape, then you'd have that option. We're just not going to, lower the quality of our mix to do so.
Okay.
And a differentiator too between the 2 clover mixes that we offer is, like, if you're establishing a new plot and you don't want to, maybe you're going to fight a little bit of weed. It's your first year putting it in. You're always going to fight weeds that first year, it seems. So Hot Chick is really good at establishing plots. Chicory is a very dominant plant. It grows quick. And then you go in and mow it. Once you see your flowers hitting on your clovers, you mow it. The more you mow it, the more you're going to choke out those weeds. Well, what we do on ours a lot is we'll establish that first year plot with Hot Chick, and then the following year we'll come in and we'll frost seed in Comeback Kid to add some more clovers to the mix. So that works really well for us.
Good stuff.
We got
next question, Dave.
Yeah, he's asking which blend from you guys to maximize tonnage and grazing tolerance, playing 3 plots from quarter to a half acre and making soil right for them now. Average pH 5.5 or 5.7, CEC 4.5, and organic matter 4%.
Planting buckwheat and oats for the spring. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
0.2, 0.5 acres. Sorry. I don't know where Chase is located. I assume this means he's looking to plant for tonnage and graze tolerance in that fall planting
in the
period.
fall, yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, we've got too many dang mixes. But without knowing anything about his property, equipment, how the property lays out, how he hunts it, if there's plots that aren't hunted and plots that are, and Showstopper's a mix that we talked about that provides a ton of tonnage and graze tolerance. Planting perennials in the fall can be a great time too. I'd prefer to go with something more like Showstopper or Sugar Mama, something of that nature that's provide a ton of tonnage and graze tolerance. With Showstopper has the perennials and annuals, so it kind of allows for a little bit more graze tolerance than some other annual mixes. And then we talked about Showstopper. So those 2, from a tonnage and graze tolerance standpoint, in really small plots, are probably the best. I'm not mentioning Big Sexy, which is our #1 selling food plot of all time, but that one would obviously bring in a pilot here too. So here I am muddying the waters.
Because Sugar Mama, you've got your nice fall brassica mix, but then next spring you'll have some clovers coming back. So that's kind of a nice carryover mix until if you're only going to plant it once a year and you want your brassicas, at least in the spring, you'll have some clovers coming back up that can kind of push you through until you replant.
DomainOutdoors.com.
Nope.
Yeah.
Domain Outdoor, no S.
Yep.
Domain Outdoor.
Sorry.
Rock and retirement. The benefit of using annual clovers. Is it just to improve soil nitrogen or just a cover plot for weeds until fall planting?
I kind of answered this in my last one,
Yeah.
I mean, we use crimson, we use berseem, and we use some. Balanza is technically an annual. It's really a biennial, in my opinion. It's a two-year clover for the most part. And I live as far north as most humans plant from a tolerance standpoint. But yeah, I mean, a lot of your annuals help with soil improvement. Your crimsons do. Berseem will. They germinate very quickly, which I like. They provide high levels of protein. They provide a ton of forage and can handle graze. So there's a lot of reasons. Sometimes they get a bad rap because they don't come back every year. Some guys don't want them to come back every year. Right. So it's one of those things where we've had fantastic success with them, especially in different parts of the U.S. So I don't know if I'm answering his question as well as I could, but man, I think there's a lot to be said for them. They get a bad rap sometimes. But I mean, what's your opinion of it, guys?
I love planting annual clovers for the green manure to turn back into the fall to basically to help improve soil and always always having something green in the ground growing.
Yep. Yeah, and if I'm doing a smother crop, usually it's a buckwheat.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now I want to talk about screening because you guys offer a product called Incognito, and I'm a huge fan of Egyptian wheat, screens, not only to use for access, but also to divide food plots. And I want to get your guys' take on, there's some people that'll say Egyptian wheat, the first snowfall, it just flops over. And I completely disagree with that. It comes down to how you actually plant it with soil fertility levels. And we get it to grow 10, 15 feet tall, and it's snowing, and it lasts. And it boils down to soil fertility, pH, nitrogen, and potassium for stalk strength. So I want to get your guys' take on that. On your product.
I can let Mike hit on the specifics, but for our purpose, this year on my property, it was definitely just a screen to get into my muddy blind, and it was successful. I'd get in, deer would be in there, they wouldn't even see me, so that was huge. But a mistake that guys made last year, and a mistake that I made last year that I won't be making this year, is I didn't plant it wide enough. I did probably 3 feet wide. I needed to probably go 6. What was that?
I said I try to tell guys 10 feet. But I planted 2 feet in my backyard too, and it's still standing. So, but I'll let you finish, Tim, and then I'll jump in.
No, that was all, and just not overseeding it. We talk a ton, and this goes to most of our mixes, the brassicas, specifically clovers, you can get away with overseeding, but Incognito or any of our brassica mixes, you got to give the seed room. So I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make too, is they put too much seed down, thinking it's going to come in thicker, and then it doesn't come in because all your plants are competing with one another. But I'll let you talk to it a little bit because it is a concern around us in Wisconsin where we get heavy snowfall, typically a lot of windy days and stuff. And that's where we put the right kind of seeds in to help provide the height and stuff like that, but also the strength.
Yeah, when we created it, the 3 seeds in there are varying heights. And the one variety of sorghum that we use is kind of a stockier blend that's not going to grow as tall, 6 feet tall or so. And in our testing, what we found is that kind of helped create that stable foundation to withstand what Wisconsin can throw at it. But honestly, Dave, I think you nailed it with your explanation of why you've seen success with it and why some folks may not have. I would say 99% of the time, what I see when plants fail to withstand the wind, the rain, what have you, is the soil environment didn't allow the stalks to develop well enough, if you will, to have the strength to withstand it. I mean, it was about 99% of the time. And I tested some here where I have poor pH, and even with the amount of nitrogen I put down on it, the stalk development wasn't as good as you'd want to withstand the winter. So my pH was a 5, and it just was low. Another thing too that I saw some folks have minimal success with was the way in which they planted it. More of kind of a broadcast method where the seed was actually sitting on the top of the soil when it germinated, not allowing for proper root development, nutrient intake, and then again, those stalks not being as dense as needed to withstand the wind and the rain. Like I said, between that and we've tried to get guys to plant a little bit wider than a foot or two. I mean, that's just not enough plants to provide the barrier that you really want. I planted it 2 feet wide in my backyard. It worked, but I'm going to plant it even wider this next year. So a lot of times it is what you know, like anything, you get out of it what you put into it. If your pH in your soil isn't good enough, it will grow. It will do good things, but it may not provide all of the levels of things that you want. So you need to work every year to try to get to those levels, like you said, with the nitrogen and the potassium, the things that it needs to maximize its growth. You're going to get better results. So we had a podcast last week, and the gentleman had never planted a food plot, and I said, honestly, here's what you're going to learn. The first year, you're going to cut corners. Things are going to go wrong. The next year, you're going to cut less corners. Some things are going to go wrong. It's going to go better. By the time you get into this thing and you start to realize the time and money invested and what you're trying to accomplish, you're not going to cut any corners anymore, because you know that every single step is there for a reason, and you're going to get the optimum results when you follow them all. So it's one of those things, you know. I think you nailed it, Dave. We could have said nothing after your explanation of it, but it's a fantastic mix, like Tim said, to conceal access in and out of a plot. When you're hunting a food plot, there's probably deer in it when you enter it and exit it, you know? So it's kind of a no-brainer. Another neat way that guys are using it, to your credit, is to break up plots or create an hourglass or a shape to it to make deer, to funnel deer into areas where you can successfully get a shot at them. So it's a blend that really is unique enough to be utilized however you want to creatively to enhance your property. It's an annual. I have guys that mix it with switchgrasses to provide quick growth and then allow that switchgrass to come up later. So it can be used in a variety of ways that makes it really unique. It's really inexpensive. It's fairly easy to work with. 110 days it could be 12 feet tall. So I'm with you. I really like it. It seems to really check all the boxes that we're trying to check when it comes to concealment, access, and patterning deer.
Well, I know it's a plan on all of our properties every single year. We always use Egyptian wheat and divide plots and use for screening. And living every day outdoors, Jay, he is in North Florida, and he's asking. He's got a road frontage, which I think I remember this, but he wants to know if incognito would work down there because you don't want to draw deer to it. And I think that's a good, reason and topic to talk about is screens that companies have, and they actually have food in them. And to me, it doesn't make sense to have food in the screen because you're trying to use it to block your access. When you have food in it, it's no good.
Yeah, that's why we kind of left sunflower, and I know some companies will use soybeans too to differentiate levels as a foundation. We tried to avoid those, even though I like both. I like the idea, but yeah, I mean, our goal was to conceal access. So It'd be a great option. It may be another option too, where you use incognito, but you also, implement some cedars and some switch and some things that, are going to last forever. So I use it as kind of over the next 5 years, your goal is to create concealment for good. So using incognito over the next few years to provide that instant cover, and then maybe some cedars and some switch to provide permanent protection.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a similar situation where we've got a 20-acre field that's right on the main highway by where we hunt, and it's always been in ag, and we're going to pull it out of ag this year. We're going to do a couple of DNR programs, CRP programs, but there's a ridge that runs across the middle of the field, and we want to block the backside of the field, so that way we can have 10 acres to play with our stuff. But incognito is definitely going to go in across the gut this year, because that's going to allow us to quickly, hopefully, screen as much as we can while we get some of the switchgrass and the different pines and cedars and stuff. We're going to start planting them this year. Probably going to be a 3-year project to get all the trees in that we want. And obviously you need probably 10 years until those trees block enough to actually serve their purpose. But we got that big project starting off this year. We're going to try and film it all, but it's almost that exact use case. We want to block off the road. I don't want people stopping on the road, and poaching is bad around us, just like it is anywhere. But I also want them to feel more comfortable in that field and give us more chance of success. So,
yeah,
it's sad that we've got to create a mix to keep poachers out.
I know.
You know what I mean? My God.
Here's one for you guys. David's asking, putting Comeback Kid and Boss Brew together in a half-acre plot in the woods with partial sun for a fall food plot in Georgia. He's planting buckwheat in the spring for organic material.
I'd be curious to know what partial sun is. Just to be aware. Try to get 3 to 5 hours a day on either one of those. You could mix them together. I wouldn't use all of the Comeback Kid necessarily. I mean, Boss Brew in itself covers a half acre, so we just want to be careful to not overseed or put down too much. You might, suffocate out some of the brassicas, but Boss Brew's a really neat mix, especially down in Georgia. Kind of that fall planting period. It's got 9 different plant varieties. It's got literally has everything in it. So, knowing what the pH would help, and also just to make sure that it's going to get 3 to 5 hours of sunlight a day. It should work in partial sun. It's not going to work in dense forest. So just to make sure that we're on the same page there. Otherwise, I like adding buckwheat in the spring with that organic matter. That's something that Tim and I have been testing and working on some different options to emphasize more of that going forward. But I love Comeback Kid and Boss Brew as options, especially down there.
Well, I know sunlight is a major issue for a lot of food plotters where they don't get enough. And I've had this issue, years ago. And the first thing that I noticed was the plants will grow very tall and quick, but then you get a rain or like a heavy wind, it just flops over because it doesn't have the sun to photosynthesize and create a root system. So it just flops over.
I had the exact same thing happen this year to me. And I was trying to put a new plot because it was right during that the initial lockdown and stuff. And I was just living at my cabin, and it's like I cut down a couple of trees, and I thought I cut enough down, and there was no leaves yet. And I put the plot, and I used our No BS mix, and literally that's exactly what happened. It shot up, and I remember going in there, and I'm like, this is going to be killer. And all of a sudden, the leaves started coming in. We got some spring rain, and that's exactly what happened. The whole thing wilted, and it went away. And I'm like, ooh, so need more sun. But you also have some mixes that can tolerate less. So Hot Chick, we'll talk about Hot Chick, but I had an old 4-wheeler trail, and we went in and we knocked it down, filled it up, and I put Hot Chick in. But it gets a good afternoon sun. So you're talking 3-4 hours of sun a day, and that whole trail system came in unbelievable. And it was like 40 yards from my plot that didn't. So goes to show, sun's important for sure.
We've found a lot of success too with guys that have those kind of backwoods food plots that are very shaded, to get them established in the spring, no matter what they're planting, really, because then it allows those roots to develop and the plant to develop in that early spring when there's less canopy. And hot chicks typically the one we go to, but and then it allows that plant to utilize less sun as it's already established and kind of make it through the fall. So the chainsaw works great too.
Oh yeah, Chris, we got Belinda back.
Belinda's back.
Hi,
What's
Belinda.
your thoughts on using green machine blend for fall food plot in Michigan?
I love Green Machine. We don't talk about it enough. It's a really, really, really neat mix, especially where she's at. Way up in the thumb. That's kind of by us. That's our type of climate.
Okay.
I'll let Tim talk about Green Machine because he planted it right in front of his muddy as well. But that's a heck of a neat food plot mix.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of those great mixes. It comes up quick. It germinated awesome. It's got a really unique variety in it. But yeah, I mean I would highly recommend it as a fall food plot. I want to expand its use a bit on our property this year. You've got your oats, you've got your winter peas, which it's kind of funny because my plot was too small and you saw the little peas coming up, and the deer literally just went through everything and just nipped all my peas. I'm like, no, but I didn't put enough in, obviously, but great mix, great fall plot. Yeah, I put it in every year.
It's another example of how we create mixes. Like Tim's point, it's designed for a cold weather food plot. However, anybody that's ever planted it knows that once those winter peas get to be about that tall, the deer will systematically eat through each one. So while it's designed to be hunted when it's cold, those winter peas germinate when it's warm. So you're gonna have deer in there in September, October eating those. You got your winter wheat and your Arctic oats staying green late into the year. You got a foundation of brassicas. It's one I would definitely recommend, Belinda.
When they talk a lot about, even like we've talked about a little bit, but these brassicas and deer not hitting them till they're cold. I mean, you've got turnips popping up, and you got the big taproot going down before the first frost even hit. And all of the green on top is just nipped down. But then all of a sudden you get into that deep freeze, you get that first real good cold front in, and all of a sudden you'll start seeing them hit them. But really when you start seeing them hit them is when that snow falls and it gets cold. Like you go to a big sexy plot or illicit or no BS, some of our plots that have the radishes in them too, and you just see dig marks everywhere going in to eat those purple top turnips and radishes. So ours get hammered all year long, which is really what I think drove us to try and figure out not a better fall plot, but another alternative that could take more graze pressure, because we don't have a tremendous amount of food plots. We've got a couple acres that we plant on my property, but it's definitely interesting.
Now we're coming into, this is one of my favorite things as well. Well, we're coming into frost seeding season here, and you guys can name some of your products that people can use this coming frost seeding season. And we'll talk about a couple different ways we can do it, whether you're doing it on a plot that hasn't had anything done to it the previous year, or say you planted brassicas in the fall and you're frost seeding into that to convert it to like a perennial. Yep. For us, me and Chris, whether we do like on clients or such, we sometimes will plant clovers in with winter wheat, and then come fall time, we just mow that down and then we establish a clover plot. So what are some of your guys' ways on frost seeding and some of the products that you can, people can use?
I did see one question talking about if you're putting it into virgin ground, is just making sure that the ground's clear. If it's full of debris and leaves and stuff like that, and you're not getting good seed to soil contact, you're not going to let Mother Nature, like the whole intention behind frost seeding is to let Mother Nature do its thing and naturally pull those seeds down. If there's a bunch of leaves and debris and stuff like that that's stopping your seed from gaining access to the soil, and then it's not going to work, right? So you got to an area cleared up. It's the first time putting it in, it can definitely benefit you. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. I don't know if you guys are.
Yeah, I hear that too.
It's gone. I think it's gone now.
All right, but yeah, no, that's a big part of it. Is do you get good seed to soil contact? If you do, then frost seeding can be awesome, and you're disrupting the soil. Anytime you go in with a rodent killer, anytime you go in and disrupt the soil, you're unearthing new weed seeds. So if you can do it naturally and just let the clover seeds do their thing, you'll see a lot better success.
One of the big questions I always see is when should I frost seed? And you can't really put a date on it. It depends on where you're at. Like here, it's going to be probably end of March before the snow even begins to go away. I was kidding with Dave earlier before you guys got on, and I said we might get some soil tests by July 4th. Yeah, I don't know, man. We got a lot of snow here.
We got a lot.
Yeah,
it's funny though. I mean, everybody wants to put a date on it. When should I plant it? When should I frost seed it? It depends on the weather, expected rain forecasts and things. There's some factors involved.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we're usually frost seeding around early mid March, somewhere around there.
That's a great point. I was going to mention that too when Tim was talking about it. It's the number one question we get about frost seeding is what date should I frost seed? And then the thing about it, the challenge with it is there isn't a date. What I always say is, if you can look at that 30-day forecast, a lot of the new apps have the 30-day, and whether it's accurate or not, it is what it is. But figure out kind of when you've kind of finally broken that stretch of, it can get real nasty and down to zero and in those cold temps, and then wait for a good stretch where it's going to freeze at night and thaw during the day. And that's my favorite time. If I can do it on about an inch of snow, and I'm gonna have that freeze thaw for the next week or two, that's when I'm gonna do it. The nice thing about our comeback kit and our hot chick mixes, those seeds can sit there and just lay dormant, wait for the timing to be right with seed and soil temps. So I know guys right now are chomping at the bit, anything to go out there and frost seed or anything. And obviously we're not gonna do that yet around here, but hopefully by early mid-March, we'll start to do that as well. But it's a great way to establish plots, fill in plots. To Tim's point, the key is seed to soil contact. So whether it was a area that was prepped last fall, or to Dave's point, a brassica plot that's now been just demolished, decimated by deer, providing plenty of seed to soil contact, or an area that maybe you've had perennials in there for a couple of years and you've noticed some areas where water is settled or deer have really grazed heavily. It could be another option to frost seed as well. To Tim's point, when you don't till the soil, you don't unearth weed seeds that you didn't know existed, and now you've created competition. So comeback kit allows the plants you want to grow kind of a head start, and it can be a fantastic way to establish perennials. So
very cool.
Definitely.
Now, I know this is a loaded question.
Oh boy.
Oh, here it comes. Here it comes.
Turn his hat backwards. Everybody asks the same questions. But if you had to pick one from Mike and Tim, what would you plant for somebody that's brand new to food plotting and they have no clue what to do? They're watching this video right now. What would they plant in the spring?
We're going to pick the same one here. I'll let Tim go.
Hot chick.
Yeah.
Hot chick.
Yeah. It's probably you can make more mistakes with that mix than you can with other mixes. You can overseed it. I think that's a common mistake that first on food plotters make is following the seed ratio and putting down the right amount of seed, especially with brassicas, because you get those tiny seeds. You can't see them once they hit the ground. and you're like, oh, I didn't put any down, and then you dump a dang half acre of seed on an eighth of an acre, and then everything comes up all like it's just not going to do well. So I think hot chick starting off with a mix like that is going to give you're going to have better success.
And it's a misnomer too. It's more than a lot of times guys think spring plots aren't hunt plots. I'd hunt hot chick any time of the year. I mean, we have it on all the places we hunt, and I mean, it performs as well as anything later into the year too. So to Tim's point, it's user friendly, provides a ton of protein and minerals. It's tolerant to just about everything: rain, drought, sunlight, lack thereof, lack of nutrients, low pH. Doesn't need heavy equipment. We can go on, but he and I are very aligned with what we would recommend for that first time plotter in the spring.
All right, I want to talk about fall too, but I want to get you guys to answer James's question. Will Comeback Kid do well in sandy soils such as low country in South Carolina? Have a 100-yard lane in full sun and another in partial shade.
So if you can, this might be a scenario too where not knowing the pH. I mean, Comeback Kid is not as pH tolerant as others. The L-site clover in there is very pH tolerant, but overall, it's going to do better where pH is much closer to 7. I'm not saying yours isn't. I don't know what it is. With sandy soils in the low country there, if the pH is desirable, and the nutrient levels are favorable and you can get it established, man, it can handle sand with the best of them because it's got super long roots where it can pull the moisture up. So without more information, I can't give a firm answer. But if pH and nutrient levels are favorable, heck yeah, man, it could be great. So without knowing that, I mean, if you want to give these guys a buzz with more info, they can probably answer it, or I can later, but it could be a fantastic option for you.
David's asking if we put fertilizer down at the same time as planting the seed. And for me, we only fertilize when we're putting the seed down, or if we're fertilizing, say like a perennial food plot, then yeah, we'll plant that after, early spring or something like that. But for us, we only put it down when we plant.
Yeah, us too. I think the thing that we talk a lot about too is, and sometimes you think you get it right and you miss, is just making sure you got rain in the forecast so you don't it. You can't, I mean, the weatherman, I want that job because you can be accurate like 30% of the time. But we were joking, we were on that podcast last week, and I was joking, like I was literally out finishing planting and I was running with the fertilizer in a downpour, just trying to get it out. Like, we always planted at put fertilizer down at the same time. Things like your incognito, going back and hitting that with some nitrogen post planting once it gets germinated. Going in and hitting your clovers can be beneficial. As long as you got a good rain coming again. It's kind of like your yard. You don't go out and put fertilizer down when you got 2 weeks of straight heat coming. So
right. Yep.
We like to do it while we're, like you said, as we're seeding, because you want to get it incorporated in the dirt a little bit, because your P and your K doesn't move a whole lot. Your nitrogen will just go gone. But if you get the P and K down with the seed, in amongst the seed at the same level, that's going to feed those roots really nice. I think a lot of people just get out there and they just spread a bunch of fertilizer out, bunch of lime out, and they put their seed out there and the rain comes down. Yeah, it helps. But if you incorporate it in at planting, that's going to really help you get a jump start.
Yeah, you get less runoff too when you incorporate it.
Agreed.
Same thing, fall plots. If you guys had to pick one for somebody that's brand new to food plots, what would you tell them to plant?
No BS.
I'm finally gonna give Big Sexy some love.
Big Sexy.
I mean, I'll be honest. This is what our third year. Out of all the mixes we've planted, sold, whatever, there's been more deer kill than Big Sexy. We've gotten more positive reviews from Big Sexy, and there are more people that say, I don't care where I live, how much acreage I have to plant, I will always have Big Sexy somewhere on my property. So got to give that one some love.
Okay.
And I knew Tim was going to pick No BS because he's a No BS homer. So
Chris, you got anything?
For good reason. We did a shitty job of explaining No BS when we launched it. We explained it as it was a throw and grow. So people would look at it and be like, wow, it's more expensive than the other throw and grows on the market. That's because there's no BS in it.
Right.
So we've gotten better, and now more people are using it. It's a dang hunt plot that can just grow anywhere. It's how it works. So to Tim's point, it's catching up to Big Sexy in sales and deaths when it comes to big giant bucks. So
Or does. We don't discriminate.
we don't discriminate. Sorry.
So to all the viewers watching right now, if they want to get a hold of Mike or Tim, talk about food plots, phone call, order some seed, how can they find you guys?
Best way is to, we have our website, domainoutdoor.com. We've got a contact us form right there. It comes right to my inbox. So I kind of froze up there. But I'm happily responding every day to that. But our Facebook page, we post every day. A lot of it's pictures from customers and friends and people that love food plotting as much as we do. We do about every other week a live video called Beers and Bucks. So we grab a beer and talk food plotting for about an hour. That typically turns into a very informative, a lot of people asking questions. So that's a good way to do it too. But message us on Facebook if you've got questions. We'd rather answer questions than just have you buy seed and have that question unanswered and do something wrong. Because like Mike said earlier, we've probably made the mistake already, and we'll continue to learn. But our community is growing on Facebook too. So a lot of times even other people that are like our page will chime in and answer your question as well. So
Also, Domain Outdoor LLC on Instagram as well. And then we've got a dealer locator on our website too to help guide you to a local retailer. Obviously, you can buy directly on our website as well, but if you can support those local stores, everybody wins that way too. So
we're gonna be updating the dealer locator here too. We just shipped out a bunch, so we'll have a lot more stores and a lot more states. So as soon as we get that updated, you can type in your zip code or your city and it'll tell you where the closest store is. So
Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining on, answering the questions, helping
yeah.
guys out. Thanks, Chris, joining on. And you guys watching, if you guys have any questions, you know how to find me. Mike and Tim, you guys can email them, call them, order some seed, and get a hold of Chris, and we can come up with a plan.
There's probably not a whole lot of questions that Dave or Chris can't answer. So obviously they follow you already, but you guys are great resources too, and have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to planting and management and strategy and things of those nature too. So I would say, like I said, if they've got questions on our products, there's a good chance you guys can answer them and explain how to use them appropriately on their property as well too. So
oh yeah, definitely for sure.
We thank you for that. We appreciate you for that, and we learn from it too. That's one of the beautiful things that Tim and I are honest about. We learn as much from these as anybody that may be listening, whether it's from somebody listening or from who we're talking to with you guys. So that's what makes it fun. So
yeah, that's what it's all about. Learning from each other and having failures and fixing it the following.
If you haven't failed, you're lying.
That's right.
Well, I always say it's work in progress. Yeah. What you do this year will help you next year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dave, can I go back? I want to go back for 1 second. There was a guy in the comments that was asking about an old pasture. If he goes over to our sister channel, which is mine, City Sticker Chris, I have a whole playlist. Dave and I worked on a pasture across the road from my house here, 20-acre pasture, and it was turned into food plot. And I actually hunted it this year, killed some deer on there. There's videos. But check out that playlist. We didn't mean to skip over. We couldn't answer every one of these questions tonight. But I wanted to touch on that because I have a specific playlist for that, pasture to plot, it's called, and it's 7 or 8 episodes. So if you would watch, I forget what the guy's name was. That's a shameless plug. I'm sorry.
No,
But
that's
guys,
fine too. And I'm going to plug something too. If there were some questions that we missed, reach out to Dave or Chris, or reach out to Tim or I on Facebook or Instagram, or on our YouTube channel or whatever. Happy to help. That's what we're here for. So if we missed something, reach out to one of us, and
no doubt.
we're all here for the same reasons. So
yeah,
Absolutely.
I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight. It was really cool.
thanks for having us.
Hopefully we can do some more of this.
We would love that. Like I said, Tim and I live for this, so we appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Great. We'll be in touch, guys, and have a great night. And thanks for joining in again.
You bet.
Very cool.
Thanks, fellas.
See you
Appreciate it.
guys.
All right.
Be
See you
well.
guys later.
Good night.